So that was basically a guided tour through sort of some of the greatest riffs. I'm not going to say all of the greatest or the definitive list because people will only start slavering at us on YouTube. So that is a bunch of our favorite guitar riffs. And tonight, basically, we're going to talk about creating your own riffs and how to sculpt those riffs. Really how to take musical ideas that often seem too simple or throwaway, but that could be made into, classic parts of songs. And basically what we're going to do is just talk through a couple of different approaches, illustrating both from a guitar player's point of view and also from a rhythm section's point of view. So hopefully should give you some fresh ideas for boosting up the riffs in your own songs. I'm going to hand this first part over to this guy, John Wheatcroft.
The one thing about getting older is your memory starts going. I kept looking at the list and memorizing what the next three were, but by the time I got to the second tune, I had to look again to see what the next one was. It's terrible, man. Anyway, so as Dave said, one of the things that's really, really important when it comes to constructing riffs, not necessarily just guitar riffs, by the way. I mean, that's something that's worthwhile keeping in mind. That even though a lot of the riffs that we played there were derived from guitar, it's not necessarily the case that it has to be the guitar that originates these things. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, the actual origins of the word came from jazz background horn parts, like short for refrain, and it was usually the improvised section that the band would play behind a solo. So, for example, I'm clean. So someone might be taking a solo, and one of the horn players might go. So do you get the idea what I'm talking about, where it's a repetitious figure? And maybe they were a little bit too complex, actually. They're the kind of things that you play towards the end of a solo, because the idea is it's not to detract from the solo. So I think when it came to using riffs for compositions, let's think about it as being a simple melodic phrase that forms an integral part of the composition. So without, go down, go down, go, you don't get a whole lot of love. Without go, 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 you haven't got smoke on the water. But it isn't the melody line. It isn't the lyrical content. It's not even the form. It's much simpler than that, but it defines the song. So the trick is, well, there's a number of things and a number of factors that we'll look at, and we're also happy to answer questions as well. So I'm sure you've got your own ideas as to what constitutes a great riff. But my definition is a riff is something that's simple enough to be memorable, but it's not so simple or obvious that it won't withstand repetition. So if you play something that's really, really super simple, there's so much so that almost everyone could think of it instantly, then it's going to get on your nerves actually after a while. If you hear it too many times, it's going to become irritating rather than something that's going to get you into that kind of headspace. It's almost sort of like hypnotic trance-like, I suppose similar, I guess, to a mantra. If you're into that kind of thing, if you're into meditation, it's not a million miles away from a mantra, the idea that you play something round and round. So my first point is, keep it simple. That's the main thing. Now, this kind of raises a little point about composition, and we're going to demonstrate some ideas. The composition, let me just kind of get one sort of idea out there and see what you think about this. Composition is not about knowing all the options. It's not about who knows the most stuff. In fact, if anything, that could be considered to be counterproductive when it comes to composition. Composition is about being able to make a decision. That's all it's about. It's about being able to go, okay, today I woke up, I invented this tune, it's got 5 notes in it, and that's called whatever it's called, Gene Genie, or Smoke on the Water, or A Whole Lot of Love, or There She Goes. Or, I mean, just take it to ride, man. Check it out. within 10 minutes of learning to play the guitar, you could probably figure that out. The problem with it is that George Harrison, I guess it was him who put that together, said, you've got this idea, and they built a whole tune around it, and it kind of took on a life of its own. So rather than it just being an A with an added ninth and a kind of arpeggio pattern, which is the way that us as musicians, I'm guessing most of us are musicians, yeah? The way we tend to look at things, we look at it just in its component parts, it's this scale, it's this chord. Whereas most people, when they hear Ticket to Ride, they don't care that it's even an A. They don't even know. They just know it's don't go, don't go, don't. That memorable theme, the kind of like, who was it? Which composer came up with that earworm quote? It's an earworm. It might have been Beethoven. I'm not sure. It's like something that just burrows its way into your brain and won't leave. So, for example, another one that springs to mind. There's a guy from where I'm from, Liverpool, who invented this 8-note riff, and he's been dining off it for the last 30 years. But I mean, it's one of the easiest things you could possibly play on the guitar, but it's super memorable, and it's just so great. There's a certain aspect of when someone invents a great riff where you kind of like feel a tinge of jealousy and think, damn, I've already played that, but I didn't have the bravery to actually make it into something. And before breakfast, you probably tossed away enough of these things to kind of like earn yourself a whole wall full of gold discs, if only you have the confidence and the courage of your convictions to actually turn them into something. So that's probably the first thing about riffs. So be kind of careful what you put in the recycle bin, because some of it could be really good, So that's something that's important. So we're going to have a go at kind of putting something together just by taking some of the component parts that we might think of that are going to help us when constructing these riffs. So we need to consider a couple of aspects. So the first one is which notes we're going to play. Okay, so I'm going to just narrow the options for a moment. I'm going to narrow the options to just a collection of notes, which I'm guessing how many guitar players we got in the room? Okay, so you guys, you know about the pentatonic scale, yeah? Yeah. So does anyone know why the pentatonic scale is such a great sounding scale? Anyone got any thoughts? Pardon? Simple? Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's very simple. Misses out the difficult notes. Yeah, you're onto something there. There's no semitones. Yeah, Jay, sorry, you were gonna say something. Yeah, that's right, yeah. The notes, if you look at the major pentatonic scale, the first 5 notes are the first 5 notes if you go a fifth away from one another. And the fifth is kind of the most stable interval. It's the one that kind of has the least sort of degree of dissonance attached to it, other than the octave, of course, which is essentially the same note. But the most dissonant sounds in music are the semitone, that one, the major 7th, which is this, the flat 9, which is the same as a semitone, and the flat 5, because they have to do that. They have to resolve, And pentatonic scale is the only combination of 5 notes that doesn't have any of them. Any other combinations of 5 notes either adds a semitone or it becomes a different pentatonic scale. I mean, if you don't believe me, do the maths and you work it out. I'm that sad. I am that sad that I've sat down and worked these things out. So consequently, what it means is these 5 notes are rich pickings when it comes to creating riffs, because they're all surefire winners, There is one that's debatably like kind of, if there is such a thing as tension within the pentatonic scale, there's one, and arguably a second note, which are not quite as stable. But even then, they're so kind of mild in their dissonance that they're okay. So it sounds like, if we play it in the key of A, we've got these notes. Okay, so there's the notes, but you're not really going to wow anyone by going, here we go. There's my riff, at the next rehearsal you go in. What do you make of that, I think the band are probably going to look at you and go, this guy's lost it, or they're going to go rooting through the phone to find the number of another guitar player, probably.